I just want to talk to you shortly and briefly about my first experience with the RayOne Trifocal IOL. These are my financial disclosures. We are performing trials with RayOne from the Institute, but I have no personal financial interest in anything I'll be talking about. I think many of you know the injector system, which has been working very well for essentially many years. It's always being, again, improved here and there. That's the system we're using at the moment. Very intuitive, simple system, two-step, preloaded. So this new lens is also on the same injector system and the same platform. And you also know this platform, essentially the same as for the monofocal lens, concerning material, concerning the haptics. So well known and very well tested. Let me now talk about the actual new thing, which is obviously the optics. And what you can see here, there are 16 diffractive steps, or let me say rings. Altogether 4.5 millimeter diffractive zone. And outside it's actually monofocal. The idea is it's supposed to reduce visual disturbances, and you can see also be less dependent on pupil size, because it's very rare that we have a pupil which is much larger than 4.5 or 5 millimeters. And also, as you know, we have rexus overlap as well, and even if the pupil may be 6 millimeters, typically the rexus will overlap the lens, and so you don't really have a usable 6 millimeter from that perspective. And in mesopic conditions, ideally, distance vision should be even a little better. So here you can see actually the dependence on pupil size, and we'll come to that in just a moment. One thing which is very interesting on this very new diffractive step, and you'll see why it's quite different from the other diffractive lenses, the light loss has been reduced to only 11%, which I believe at the moment, at least as far as we know, is the lowest light loss on the market concerning trifocal lenses. So you can see here for 3 millimeter pupil and even up to 4.5 millimeters, it's pretty much constant. Essentially, the energy light split is about 50% for distance, and then 22% for intermediate and 26% for near. So from that perspective, the nice thing is constant even whether it's a 2.5, a 3.5 or 4.5 millimeter pupil. So you don't have that problem with pupil size, which has caused problems with some other lenses, as we know. Here the idea of a 3.5 millimeter diopter near add and 1.75 diopters intermediate add, and you can see that will obviously translate to a reading distance of about 37 centimeters and having the intermediate reading plane at about 75, which is typically arm's length, which is often also what we have for computer screens. Now let's have a look at the defocus curve, and this is the defocus curve with the new trifocal. And now we have to obviously set it into a comparison to, for example, the old, let me say old, or the former refractive bifocal lens, in this case from RayOne. And what you can see, there's very clear win in intermediate vision, as you would expect for a trifocal. Very clear, but it also, even for near vision, you can see is at least even actually better, and also of a wider range. So also the reading distance can be a little closer than we are used to from the RayOne M-Flex. Now here's the interesting thing concerning the new diffractive design. Essentially it was actually designed in partnership with, it says, leading European Technology Institute, which is actually just south of Vienna, so where I come from, in Wiener Neustadt. They have a special cluster there for new technologies, and also they have a very strong optics team, and they actually came up with this design, and together with RayOne have developed that. And what you can see is there is a so-called typical asymmetrical component, which most of the diffractive designs are like, and then also symmetrical component. What they do is they combine these two, and you come out with this quite special trifocal design. Everybody's taking up the cameras. Take the photos quick, because I'm going to go to the next. No worries, you can still see it. Now what you can see here is actually the comparison of the different trifocals which are on the market. You may know the Findl and the Acrylisa 3, which have been on the market for quite a while. They actually have a very similar design, these two, and that's also quite well known. And that's probably also the reason why they had a lot of legal disputes in the past, which I think have been resolved. But at the end of the day, they have a very similar design. Then you may know the Panoptics, which was released last year from Alcon, And you can see that has a slightly different way of approaching the diffraction. And now you can see next to that the RayOne Trifocal. And has quite a different system. So the idea is, and we'll show that right here, the idea is that first of all the light loss is even a little less than with the others, which has been 14% and 12%. And you can also see that the reading, the distances both for reading near and for intermediate are slightly different from some of the others. Especially here for the Alcon, the problem is that the reading distance is quite far away, and then the intermediate is quite close by, so they're very close together. And here we have a nicer and bigger spread. And here you can again see the light distribution. Also here, the distance still gets a lot of light. Actually, most of those on the market, the others actually all sacrifice a little distance, which I don't like too much, because I think distance is still important at the end of the day when you do nighttime driving, or if you just do driving in general. You want to have good distance vision, especially also under mesopic conditions. So I think from my perspective, I like the idea of having a distant dominant lens at the end of the day. Here you can actually see now again for pupil size, and as you know, as I told you, most of the other lenses are pretty pupil size dependent. And you can see some differences here again, always near, intermediate and far, and the way the light is distributed among these, from a small pupil up to a big pupil. And you can see here for the RayOne, it's actually very constant, up to 4.5, as I showed you before, and only then does it become actually a really distance dominant lens, which makes sense again, because if you do nighttime driving, you want to have essentially distance dominance. And so you can see here quite some differences between the lenses, and it will be very interesting to see now in the clinical trials and also the clinical impressions we will get, how that actually translates to patient function. Here looking at the US target charts, which you probably know from the past from many other lenses, comparing now the RayOne Trifocal against the two, let me say, market leaders for trifocals, namely Zeiss and Findl. And you can see here quite comparable, if not even better at intermediate, and at least, if not better, at near. So that looks pretty promising. Here now, that's for 3mm pupil, and now for the 4.5mm pupil, again, at least comparable, maybe even a little better as it appears, especially for near. So again, here now, this is a simulated study, so that means what happens here is these are healthy subjects. It's a special optical setup where the lens is put inside and the patients can look through the lens with an optical system and actually get the impression as if they had that lens in the eye. And this is actually a validated system. And they've used that now to compare, in this case, the RayOne Trifocal. This is a defocus curve with this system in place. And now comparing it here to the acrylisa tree. And you can see that there are some differences here, the standard deviations to go along with that. And you can actually see that it seems to outperform not only in the near distance, but also here in this distance, let me say, of about half a meter, 2 meters or half a diopter of defocus. So again, we'll need to see what that actually translates to in real life, in patient function, but that will be very interesting to see. So again, just to highlight here the differences between these lenses, and you can see that actually the RayOne Trifocal, obviously being the newest on the market, has also done its homework and has actually really ticked quite a few boxes where we think it may really be better than the others, or at least as good, shown in green. Now just to show you the first operation which I did, so it's the usual preloaded system, which is obviously very convenient, and which you probably know from the monofocal lens or the toric lenses. And the plunge is brought forward, very straightforward, and in this case, actually going into the eye. This is a 2.4mm incision in this case, which I did, and the unfolding of the lens as we're used to. In this case, actually, I pressed the plunge a little too much, that slight pluming, which is not necessary, and now the lens is in the bag and pretty straightforward. And here you can see the lens in the eye, and you can see the ring elements as they appear at the end of surgery. This is actually the first patient done worldwide. You can see that the RayOne co-worker is happy. I'm happy. The patient actually looks pretty happy too. but it's a little early to say because he just got the lens. You know, this is obviously just a joke, but actually the patient was happy because we have seen this patient twice since he was operated. These are just some post-op images, 1 hour after surgery, a month after surgery, centers well, but this is nothing new. We know that this platform is well centered, and these lenses look very clear and look very quiet, these eyes. So to conclude my talk, the RayOne Trifocal has a new patented diffractive step trifocal technology, as I showed you. A little different from what the others have done until now, and that's going to be reduces light loss in this only 11%, which is the lowest at the moment among the trifocals. We have a very smooth transition between intermediate and distance, and I showed you that as well. The light distribution being distant dominant, but still having quite a bit of near and pretty good intermediate, and you saw that the intermediate vision was actually pretty good and was very comparable to the other trifocals. You know the RayOne IOL material and platform, don't need to say much about that, and also that it's fully preloaded and will go through a very small incision. And with that, I would like to stop and finish, and I'll be very happy to take any questions. I'll just need some headphones in order to do that. Thank you.